If you're brand new to acrylic painting and are looking for a beginner's guide on everything you need to know to get started, this video is for you, and we're gonna get started right now. Hi guys, my name's Ashley Salvatore. I'm a professional artist here in Ponte Vedra Beach, Florida. I have a studio with a few employees, and together we create prints of my original artwork, and I ship them all over the United States. I'm gonna go into detail on everything that you need and everything you don't need so that you can create a beautiful painting and start up a hobby. I'm gonna walk you through the biggest mistakes that you can make and the simplest, easiest way for you to get started so you can start painting today. The basic supplies we're going to need to get started is a roll of paper towels, some basic paints. I love this little sealable wells that you can put your paints in, and some brushes. We're going to need some water so we can mix our paint and also clean our brushes as we go along. And I like to mix my paintings on a paper plate because it's disposable. And don't forget your spray bottle to keep your paints wet. I think acrylic painting is actually the easiest medium of all of them, including watercolors. This is an easier way to paint because with watercolors, if you make a mistake, you can't paint over it. It's over. You gotta start over. But with acrylic paints, if you make a mistake, you can just paint over it. And that's the best part of this medium. Now, when I got started a few years ago, I had no idea what to do with acrylic paints. I went to college for fine art and I did a lot of painting in college, but that was a long time ago. I'm in my 40s now, and I picked up painting initially as a hobby, and then it literally took over my life because I became obsessed with it. It brought out this creative energy for me, and also I needed a hobby. But this hobby now is my career. Even if you think that you are not an artist, you can't draw, you can't do it, I know you can do it because anyone can become a painter with acrylics. All it takes is picking up a paintbrush and getting started. We're gonna talk about common mistakes that beginners make, and some of the ones that I've heard out there that I don't think are actually mistakes and could be hurting you if you listen to some of those. And especially if you just search on Google mistakes beginner painters make, you're gonna find a list of things that I actually don't think are mistakes at all. So we're gonna go deep into this whole topic today. So the very first thing is, what is acrylic paint? Acrylic paint is similar to oil paints, however, it dries very quickly. It's non-toxic for most cases. Some of the professional acrylics can be slightly toxic in some of the colors, but we're not going to get into that because most likely you're going to get started with a very simple kit. Now, I found this set on Amazon, which includes all of the colors that a beginner really needs to get started, and it's a very inexpensive kit at around $15. I would recommend starting with something small like this as you get your feet wet and get started with this medium versus going and buying all the different colors. And especially for a lot of the tutorial videos that I share on this channel, the colors within this kit, most of them will be utilized within the paintings that we create together here. And it also includes some paintbrushes to get you started, which is super helpful. Now, what makes acrylic paints different is that it dries very quickly and it is thicker than a watercolor paint. Now, if you are wondering the difference between acrylic paint and oil paint, you can get a very similar result with the painting with acrylic paints without it being toxic, without having to go through decades of education to be able to put a painting together. And also, you can start and complete an entire painting within an hour, which is so different than oil paints. I'm the type of person that likes to start and stop a project in the same day, and this allows you to do that. Okay, so you have your paints. Now you're gonna need your surface to paint on. With acrylic paints, you can paint on stretched canvas or canvas board, but for beginners, and actually to this very day, I still love this because this was one mistake that I made when I first got started. I started with painting these huge paintings on canvas, and it was way overwhelming and it was way above my head, and I don't recommend that you start like that. To get good at anything, you need to be putting in reps and you need to be doing a lot of it. If you're painting on big giant canvases, you are going to complete way less paintings than if you paint paint on paper. I had no idea when I first started painting with acrylics that you could even paint on paper. I thought that was just special and reserved for the watercolor people. So with paper, they make all of these different acrylic papers that you can use. You can also use like a heavyweight cardstock, or even watercolor paper works great with acrylic paints. Now, you don't have to prime the paper or gesso the paper before you begin, and that's one of the reasons why I really like starting with paper. Not to mention, these little mini paintings can look so beautiful framed with a mat. So if you're thinking, oh, but I want to paint on stretched canvas so I can just hang it on my wall, yes, you can do that, but I would suggest waiting until you are more of an intermediate to advanced to move on to that, because there's way more involved in that. You can purchase a stretched canvas and start painting right out of the box, unwrap it from the plastic, because a lot of them come gessoed. From my experience though, the surface is still going to be very rough and the paint is going to get absorbed into the surface, and you're going to be using a lot more paint and wasting a lot of money that is unnecessary in the beginning. Or they also have paper that is textured like canvas, and that would be the easiest way for you to get started with this medium. Now, if you do want to go stretched canvas and you're like, Ashley, I'm going all the way, I want to be at step 10 from the very start, then what I suggest you do is when you take the canvas, unwrap the canvas, you're going to want to apply gesso to the surface, which will fill in a lot of the grooves, and then sand down the surface, and then apply another layer of gesso and sand it down again, and then apply another layer and sand it down again. And remember, they have to dry in between layers. So this is why I am saying start with paper. Also, when you start with paper with a smoother surface without all that texture, it's a lot easier to get details in when you get to your final layers. And many people don't know this, but you can actually take a paper painting and apply adhesive to the back and lay down a wooden board. Instead of painting on the board, you can lay it on top. But basically what you're able to do is attach the paper to the front of a freestanding board that kind of looks like a stretched canvas, and you can hang it on the wall, but you painted it on paper. So there's really no harm in painting your stuff on paper. I would suggest doing sizes that you can frame easily, like a 5x7 or an 8x10, so that once you have a piece that you're really proud of and you want to put up in your house, you have a size that is easy to find a frame for. Now, a big common mistake that I see all over the internet is all of these different artists telling you don't use too much water. That is a huge mistake. And I will tell you this, if you're painting on canvas, yes, you don't want to thin with too much water. If you're painting on paper, think of it a little bit like watercolors. You can add more water and you can use more water as you are thinning your colors and creating your layers, and you're not going to run into the same problems that you would if you were painting on canvas, which has a different type of surface, and thin acrylic paints don't work as well. It's more absorbent on paper, and especially for the first layer, you can definitely apply water. Now, the one benefit of acrylic paints is that they dry fast, but also because they dry fast, sometimes it makes it very difficult for beginners to create the blending and the layering that they want. So what you can do is you can purchase a retarder or slow drying medium. And with a slow drying medium, you can add a little bit of that to your paint and it will slow the drying time down so that you can paint longer with it staying wet. The next tip I have for you as you get started on your first acrylic painting, and for every acrylic painting after that, is to make sure you have a spray bottle on hand so you can continually spritz your paints in your palette and keep them wet. Because if you put a little bit of paint on that palette, it's going to dry out really quickly and then you're going to be wasting paint. So instead of wasting paint, let's just spritz down our palette every once in a while. Now you're probably wondering, okay, what about varnishing my painting after I'm done? With acrylic paints, you do not have to varnish your painting. You can if you want to. If you want like a very shiny surface, you can do that. But acrylic paints seal to a plastic and you don't have to apply anything above and beyond that. And I don't suggest that you do, because applying varnish on top of paintings can create bubbles can have hairs attach in there or dust that comes down, and it is a layer that, unless you are looking to create a painting that is like 36 by 36 and you're selling it for like $20,000, that is just not necessary. And especially for someone starting this as a hobby, that is not even a necessary step that you need to worry about or even think about. Now, some common mistakes is using black to shade your colors. I don't suggest using black for that at all. You shouldn't. You can use black to create green by mixing it with yellow, and that's my favorite way to use black. But if you're looking to create a shadow, as in like if you have a red item or object that you are painting and you want to create shadow within that, you want to look at the color opposite of it on the color wheel and add a little bit of that to darken it and create a nice deep shadow. Also buy color wheels off of Amazon. Okay, the next mistake that a lot of beginners make when they get started is they don't paint in layers. Now with acrylics, the benefit of it drying quickly is I would suggest blocking in your colors and creating your shadows first. With acrylics, we go from dark to light, which is different than watercolors, which go from light to dark. So you want to start with your shadows and your deepest colors. Now, if you were painting a white flower as example, you want to start with like a gray or like brownish base color in there, and then come in with your white paints on top of that. On the topic of white paints, if you just use white right out of the tube and you start painting with that, it's going to be very difficult for you to get in there with some additional details because you're going way too bright white. What I suggest doing is adding just the tiniest little tiny bit of yellow oxide or yellow ochre to your white to create a creamy white. Now look at these flowers behind me. They're white, but they look creamy and they don't look bright white. This painting here that I didn't use any white straight out, and it feels creamy and nice and beautiful, and that's how you get that look. Do you need to know how to draw to create beautiful acrylic paintings? The answer is no. You're here to learn how to paint. You're not here to learn how to draw. Now, if you do have those drawing skills, that's great, and you can practice drawing to get good at drawing. That will improve your paintings down the line, but you don't have to know how to draw to be able to get started with painting. And a lot of videos you will see, they might go straight from a blank canvas, taking the paint and start blocking things out and then layering on top of that. You can do that. That is a slightly more advanced way of painting. If you start with a sketch first, then you will feel a little more confident in that you will have the perspective right. Now, there are different ways to get that sketch down on paper without you having to just look at the thing and draw it from just looking at it. Believe it or not, especially if you're like trying to paint flowers or animals or something like that, if you don't start with an image that has proper proportions, it could look way off, even if you are trying to paint impressionistic. This is an opinion. There are no rules in painting. There are just guidelines and opinions and tips to help make your paintings the best that they can be as you get started. So what can you do to get that sketch down? There are different ways that artists do this. One way is using a projector, so you can find the source photo of what you are going to paint, put it on your computer and project it onto the wall, put your paper on the wall, and then outline what it is you're going to paint. There are also different apps you can use to just prop your phone up, put the paper underneath, and then you can outline what you're about to draw that way. If you have a scanner at home, which a lot of people's home printers do have like scanners on the top, what you can do then is you can take tracing paper and you can trace what you're going to paint off of a photo, and then you can scan it into your computer and then print it onto art paper that you will be painting over. That's another way that you can create your sketch. A different technique would be to print out your source photo, create lines of grids, and then paint what you see within each grid. Now, in my videos here on this channel, created to help beginners learn painting, I offer paint with me kits, which include a couple sketches of the painting that we will be painting in the tutorial, and then I step by step walk you through how the sketch becomes then the finalized painting. I also include downloads so that you can download the sketch if you want to print it yourself. So be sure to check that out as I continue building out these videos for you guys. This is a brand new channel and I only have a few tutorials up at the moment, but I will be adding more, and I would love to hear the topics that you would like to see. And one easy way to create a portfolio of all of these paintings that you will be creating is just by buying a big pad of tracing paper or vellum, and then placing your painting in between the sheets and then just letting them stack up that way. When you are ready to get more larger size paints, I really like the Liquitex brand as well as the Golden brand, but you can also use craft paints. They're gonna dry very matte and can create like a chalky feel. So I would recommend just sticking with the student grade paints. Some colors I would suggest going to the professional level, such as white or yellow, because that way you get more of a thicker pigmented color. You can get the coverage that you need, but those thinner paints do have a purpose. Now, if you are painting something and you add way too many layers and it becomes unworkable, like the surface is just too textured, you can't get the detail you need, what you can do is use some rubbing alcohol and simply rub that over the top and bring it back down to a smooth surface, and then let that dry and paint over it, okay? So that's a little pro tip for you as you get going on this. My grandmother started painting later in life. She was probably in her early 70s when she started painting, and she took this on as a full-blown hobby, and she created the most beautiful artwork before she passed away. I think that painting as a hobby is one of the best outlets for stress relief, and especially these days with mental health issues, it can be great. It can also be very frustrating when you can't get the look you're going for and you're trying and you can't succeed. And so I want you to just step back from that and maybe take a break from painting if that happens to you. But understand there's a messy middle that goes on with every single painting as you're painting in layers, and it can feel very ugly for lack of a better word. It can look ugly to you, but that's normal, and that ugly layer is the way it's supposed to be. We're all supposed to have an ugly layer in the middle as we then go in and add more details to the top. So don't stress out. You're not going to be creating this painting and having it come together with perfect details all the way through to the finished end. It's going to come in layers, and so it's going to look very messy, it's going to look very unpolished, but don't stop there, because that's where people stop and give up and say, I'm a horrible painter, I can't do this, because they stop at the messy middle. I want to push you to just go a little further and continue on. Now, if you're ready to get started, I have the perfect video tutorial for you to go to next, and that is a painting of how to paint a hummingbird with florals. You'll love it. It has step-by-step how to follow along and paint. Thanks guys for watching this one. I will see you in the next one.